The government is offering UK adults free AI training for work.
Very much part of our predictions that we had at the end of last year. Driverless cars are coming to the UK in September.
A turning point where I deleted the entire database for my employer.
As a leadership perspective, I would have the mindset or strategy that incidents will happen is how you cope with them.
They hadn't quite got their scaling worked out. And basically, for the last 3 years, on that day, the website had crashed. I knew that!
I keep forgetting.
It's literally the same technology. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the CTO Lens. Thank you so much for joining us. We are delighted to have you. We've got a fantastic show for you today. But as always, my fantastic co-host David is here. David, how are you? How has your week been? How are you feeling?
Well, I'm okay. As you can hear, I'm a little bit hoarse. I've got a bit of a cold and I'm trying not to be too man-flu-y about it, and I shall struggle on, but you might have to carry me a little bit, Sophie, but you look like you're full of beans, so that'll hopefully be okay.
Absolutely full of beans. We'll get through it for both of us. And have you had a productive week? Are you still traveling sort of back and forth to various different gigs?
No, I'm doing well. I'm quite enthusiastic because I've got to that point where, having identified what I need to do with the organization, in one of my roles at the minute, I'm recruiting. And please don't get in touch with me if you're a recruiter. I already have some people looking after that. And so I'm recruiting, and that's quite an exciting thing because you start to talk to people and you're like, oh, they could help with that and they could bring that to the organization. So that's quite a nice thing. I like recruiting. It can be a real ball ache jumping around, lots of interviews and stuff like that, but I'm pretty touch on all that stuff. But yeah, that makes you feel like, right, I'm going to be able to do something, and we're going to be able to change some things and stuff. So that's good. Some of my other work that I'm doing is a little bit slow and January-ified, sort of, everybody in the doldrum. And then, of course, everybody, including one of our fabulous production leaders, Luke, is off skiing. So, you get a little bit, but you can get some work done while everybody's skiing. So, it swings around. What about you, Sophie?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think we're both a bit envious of him off on his skis, and he very rudely sent a picture of beautiful blue skies and sort of white hills earlier today. So he is in the doghouse. I'm good. I've had a pretty productive week. Obviously, it's Monday, so this is last week. I've been spending a bit of time with a few kind of early stage founders and really have reconnected with one of my favorite things, which is this blue sky. You've kind of got a problem, but there are so many different ways that you could tackle it, and what shape could they take and what makes sense. And so I've been really, really enjoying that phase of kind of, early use case creation. So as you say, I'm full of beans today.
Excellent.
Yeah. And something, for anyone listening, obviously we hope you enjoy our podcast, but we also hope you will join us and come and enjoy a few events that we've got coming up. So our next event is on the 5th of March. So it's just over a month away. And that is our Women Plus Tech Leaders event. And that's all about using culture as a leadership tool, which I think is a particularly interesting topic because a lot of our Women Plus in tech events, we kind of talk about topics and it's a safe space for women, but it's not fundamentally different what women do versus what men do, and, anyone in between. But I think particularly culture is something that expectations and roles, particularly in leadership, can sometimes differ when it comes to culture. So I'm really interested and looking forward to that discussion. You can find that on our website, on our socials. Do sign up before we get full. And we also have a couple more events. So we've got the Evolving CTO Mandate. That's on the 25th of March, open to people of all different genders. So do definitely join us on that one. And that's actually our 23rd event, which is incredible. Can you believe it?
It's usually a very popular one as well, everybody, because actually being a CTO, CIO technology leader just does change, right? And people they start, I thought it was this, it's turned into this. And so actually that, when we talk about the actual role and what it means to be a CTO, CIO, I think, people are very interested in that. So we usually get a lot of people to that event.
Yeah. So you do sign up before they get full. They are, fantastic events, both to hear some amazing perspectives from our panelists, but also to network with some really fantastic tech leaders. So on to the news. What has been happening in the news this week? David, has anything in particular caught your eye?
Yeah, there was a bit of me thinking, it was a bit like this week sort of thing. There's nothing big and hairy. So I looked a bit deeper and found a few little ones that were kind of interesting. So the government is offering UK adults free AI training for work. Now, I nearly skipped over this one. I was nearly like, yeah, what is this? You don't need training on AI. You just go and have a play and work it out for yourself. So I don't think that's the point. I think the point here is that when the government, it doesn't matter, this isn't a political statement. When the government says, oh, we're going to lean into this, or people should prepare in this and focus on this, people do think, oh, if the government is saying it, it must be a serious thing, must be, and so I think there's been a lot of flippancy around AI, a lot of dancing cats produced and all that kind of stuff, sort of thing. And I think the fact that the government are advocating and putting some money behind free training for AI just is a significant little thing, bringing it to the masses, making sure that everybody realizes it's an important part of adult life.
Mm-hmm.
So I just thought that was really, really important, and it's backed up by, policy, and I think some of the tech giants are getting involved with training them, doing the training courses and stuff like that. So and the technology secretary, Liz Kendall, sort of launched that and said, it's really important to make sure everybody can use this new technology in as part of their day-to-day work. So I thought that was quite a good thing.
Absolutely. No, it sounds really, really exciting. And I think you're right. It's sort of Amazon, Google, and Microsoft have been involved in developing the training. Which are the names that you want in there if you're talking about AI training? For me, what will be really interesting to see is, there's this great opportunity of kind of equalization and equity in terms of not just having people who happen to work at those companies get access to the sort of top tier training, and there's a real sort of separation of skills within the workforce. I think the challenge is going to be whether they can kind of capitalize on that opportunity. And in particular, are free courses enough? Will they be maintained sufficiently in light of the kind of significant complexity of AI and particularly growth of development of the technology? So maybe there's a course that's ready right now, but in 6 months, 3 months, 2 months, we need an updated course, and kind of how do we manage that evolution? So to me, that's sort of to be seen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's just a little step change, I think, in sort of national thinking. What is not a step change in national thinking is that people still love iPhones. So actually, I was quite surprised by this. I thought iPhone sales were going down, but apparently, revenue specific to iPhones rose by 16% for Apple this year compared to the same period last year. And just in case that you're not following Apple's revenue, that's 82.5 billion increase, right?
Wow.
82.5 billion. That's the revenue associated with iPhones. And I'm just like, okay, I thought people were going off iPhones, and so that's really interesting. But at the same time, their Mac sales, so the Mac laptops, etc., are dipping. And I thought, is that cause and effect? Are we becoming much more mobile? I'm an Apple guy, and I still have an Apple. I have an iPad, which was given to me for one of my other work, just so I can access documents securely that way. And I have a Mac. But but the computer I'm using now is Windows, and it's actually a Windows Surface, so it's a touchscreen, so I can take notes on it and draw scribbles and stuff like that sort of thing. So, yeah, I'm just wondering whether Macs are falling out of favor in some way, or whether people are just like, I can do everything on my phone now, so why do I need a Mac?
Yeah, it's really interesting. And that was the theme that came to me of this kind of increasing reliance on phones. And, people used to have desktops. I feel like that's almost unheard of now. Everyone has a laptop and everything's kind of portable and the keypad detaches and things like that. I'm still limited in what I can do on my phone because I like to sit down and have the proper kind of ergonomics. My partner is, he's doing spreadsheets on his phone, which annoys me no end. But, maybe that's the direction we're going in. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what is driving this increase in sales and sort of the decrease in the Macs. But I am such a fan of Macs. I have a 15-year-old Mac, which I actually took it in to get serviced, and they said it's geriatric and we won't touch it, but it still works. So I'm Mac for life at this point.
That's hilarious. That is actually hilarious. I'm sure Apple will be pleased to know about your loyalty, Sophie.
Yeah.
Is it loyalty or is it tie-in? I think it might be tie-in. I just feel like, do I love Apple? I mean, it works. It does the job. I think it's fear of. If I just went, I'm going to go to Android or to another ecosystem or something, I'd just be like, what would happen to my life? So maybe it's fear of rather than loyalty. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, sorry, David, go ahead, because I think we've got some exciting.
Yeah, I was just thinking about other stuff that came up during the week. And there's one about digital sovereignty. I've talked about this before. I don't think we've had a conversation around this, but digital sovereignty seems like somebody's going to correct me and say, oh, it's been around for years. But actually, data sovereignty, digital sovereignty is something that was sort of, I think, born last year. Started hearing about it. I think we had somebody talk about it at one of the London Tech Leaders events. Basically, it's about, controlling your data a little bit more, having it a little bit closer to home, maybe physically. Now, there are a lot of people going, oh, we're going from a cloud world back to on-prem so that we can have data sovereignty, completely in our control. And I think that's a little bit too far. I think what we're talking about, I mean, some people do that, but I think what we're talking about is territory-based, right? And with the whole America thing and China and Russia and all that kind of stuff, I think people are thinking, where do I put it in AWS? I put it in Google Cloud. Where actually is it? Sort of thing. And maybe the CTO knows that it's in that data center and that data center from a failover point of view of if it's private cloud. But if it's public cloud, who the heck knows where it is? And so AWS have launched a European, I don't know, is it ring fenced? I'm not sure how it technically works. But basically, they've sort of said, look, we'll make sure your data doesn't go outside of certain areas, certain territories. That would be interesting to see whether we get micro sovereignty. Could I have data sovereignty just for my house and garden? Could I get to that point where I can be assured if I use a particular cloud product, it's not going outside of the purview of my house? Who knows?
Yeah, it's really fascinating. And that sounds, I mean, obviously there's a difference, but that sounds a lot like on-prem. And I had the same thought when I first came across this, because I've spent, a lot of time filling in due diligence questionnaires, and you kind of check in with the data protection person and say, can I just confirm where exactly where are cloud servers based? And it was always in the EU because, sort of dealing in health. That's something necessary EU or UK. And so it took me a little while to really understand what was going on here. And as you say, it's not necessarily a move back to on-prem. Obviously, there are some people who, have need to be on-prem when you're dealing with, for example, highly sensitive data or factors like that. But it's more, as I understand it, this is a maturation of cloud. So organizations, they still want things like cloud economics or tooling that comes with cloud, but just avoiding that kind of legal, political, and operational risk. But some of the analysis around this I've been reading is that, either it's something that actually is assuaging those concerns that people have had, particularly around the Trump administration, of ultimately a US organization, even though, as you say, data is potentially hosted in Europe. Either we're assuaging those concerns, or it's just a big marketing piece to say, no, don't worry about it, we're going to sort it. But actually, technically, there's no difference in terms of ability to access data.
Yeah, I think there'll be something. There'll be some safeguard somewhere, but I do think it's just another opportunity to sell us another cloud product, but
yes.
We'll see what happens.
We will see.
I have no doubt that our CEOs will be asking us to implement it instantly anyway. So
Absolutely. Something else that's coming, really exciting, driverless cars. I mean, we've been talking about driverless cars. I think it was very much part of our predictions that we had at the end of last year, beginning of this year. And driverless cars are coming to the UK in September. Obviously, we have had a few Waymos that have been spotted here and about in London. Apparently, currently, they have drivers in them, and they are part of kind of building out that infrastructure that will allow cars to come in September. What I found interesting reading in a bit more detail about what's going to be happening later in the year is that the government is intending to change regulations to enable this to happen, but they're changing them in the second half of 2026. So that doesn't feel like a lot of time between changing regulations and actually having the cars going live on our streets. So I think it'll be interesting to see, is this a really quick turnaround? Why is it such a quick turnaround? And, again, we can go back to those discussions of what are the pros and cons of driverless cars. The transport minister had what I thought was a really nice quote that, driverless cars, they don't make the same bad decisions like driving tired or driving drunk that humans do. But we do have concerns and outstanding questions around things like cyber threats. We do still have some technological limitations. So there was a blackout in San Francisco recently, and a bunch of driverless cars stalled at traffic lights because they didn't know how to deal with a traffic light that sort of wasn't on. And you say, oh, we're going to push an update. But it does beg the question of what are these sometimes referred to as edge cases? I would call them stress cases. Do we not know about, and what is the risk associated with them? But then again, taking the really broad picture, apparently 40,000 jobs are going to be created in the UK, which is fantastic in light of continuing layoffs from the big tech firms. So I don't know, I almost want someone to sit down and do a full analysis of what is the net benefit or net negatives of introducing self-driving cars absolutely everything accounted for before I know how I feel about it.
Yeah, I'm a bit more just get on with it. All right. I'm like, I guess it's, yeah. Usually my approach to getting on with tech is nobody died. In this case, somebody could die, so you have to be a little bit careful, right? I guess. But I don't know. I've seen enough of the technology. I've seen enough of write-ups about it. I'm sold, right?
Yeah.
It'll be safer than humans. What's interesting, these 40,000 jobs. Do you think that maybe there are people sitting in like a call contact center or something, a monitoring center, watching what the cars are doing? And if somebody says to them, "Oh, Fred, do you want a cup of tea?" and they look away, maybe a car will crash, which kind of
Oh,
brings the
gosh.
human bit back into it, sort of thing. So I just said that to worry you more, Sophie.
Amazing. I appreciate it. And obviously, off of the back of this news, we're hearing that Waymo is raising 16 billion that will take them to a valuation of 110 billion, which is obviously very exciting for them.
Somebody thinks it's going to work, right?
Someone thinks. Absolutely. And what's really interesting, obviously, Tesla is another kind of player in the space, and they've been in the news this week, which is, and this is a little bit complicated. So currently, or previously, Teslas have come with two sort of semi-automated self-driving functions. One keeps you straight in your lane, and the other one keeps you going at the right speed. And they are changing their system so that, they've got kind of like a good enough something that's included. And they're making that worse. And the reason they're making it worse, and the way they're making it worse, is by taking away one of those two features. I can't remember which one it is that when it's worse, you need to upgrade. And you need to upgrade into their full self-driving package. So it's basically, it was good enough, they're going to give you an option that's worse, or you have to upgrade to the kind of full self-driving something. Okay. And it will be a surprise to no one that getting a particular number of users upgraded to the full self-driving package is one of the metrics set out in Elon Musk's 1 trillion pay package that he can achieve in 10 years. I really don't react well to this news. I think kind of forcing user behavior, either, giving them worse technology and then you need to subscribe and it's like $99 a month to self-driving, which is something that a lot of people have nervousness around. It kind of feels a little bit like capitalism gone mad and kind of just introducing significant risk potentially for one person to make a lot of money.
I mean, one person being Elon Musk, who already makes a lot of money for doing exactly this sort of thing.
Yeah. Anyway, we will see. So I think that's, we're going to see what happens with that and how users respond to it. Apparently, there are already a number of people who have subscribed, but we will see. We will see how many stick around. We've got something coming in related to Coinbase. And so this is news we touched on again, I think at the end of last year, where we were starting to see in the UK in particular, introducing regulations around cryptocurrency. And this was in the wake of Do Kwon, who was the guy behind Terra USD, finally got his jail sentence, I think 25 years for backing up one cryptocurrency with another cryptocurrency. And the whole thing sort of absolutely fell apart. David, have you seen this advert from Coinbase, the sort of everything's fine advert?
I haven't, and I would have had a bad reaction to it. The whole thing, just reading up on this story, gives me, it has a taste of, what was it called? Salary day loans, payday loans. That's what it was called, right? This was very popular. It was like, if you can't afford to pay your bills, we've solved it. We'll give you a payday loan and you don't have to pay it back and it's really cheap as long as you pay. And then, of course, you just heard horror stories about people getting into huge, huge debt because basically, no disrespect to our fellow citizens, but we're all a bit sort of believe this stuff, right? We all just get suckered into it a little bit, sort of thing. And here you've got somebody, Coinbase is a reasonably large, sort of brand, as it were. I think people will start to, and if they're going, just have some of this, it'll help you pay your gas bill. It's just, so I'm glad it's been banned, right? I think it's the right thing to do. I've got nothing against, cryptocurrency coins. I've got nothing against that at all. It's, but you need to go in with your eyes open and make your own decisions about it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you. And the thing that really left a sour taste in my mouth, and you can still see this advert, it's on YouTube. It's very much your man on your street people who are likely to be affected by things like the cost of living crisis might be struggling to feed their children. Real systemic issues throughout society that we shouldn't negate them. I don't think we should pretend that investing in cryptocurrency is the solution to them. And kind of, I think there's this real disregard for the sensitivity of these issues, and it came across as really very tasteless. So yeah, you're exactly right. So it was the ASA who was saying that this advert trivializes the risks of cryptocurrency. And again, Coinbase reported an adjusted EBITDA in Q2 of 2025 of 512 million. So it really feels like a separation between real challenges that people on the street are facing day in, day out, and large tech organizations turning a big profit, which is, as you say, not a nice comparison. Hamid and Joe, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. How are you both doing?
Good. Nice to meet you.
Good.
Amazing.
Thanks for having us. Hi, Sophie and
Thank
David.
you so much. Thank you
we've
for joining
seen
us.
you guys at London Tech Leaders on several occasions, and you've had a long relationship with London Tech Leaders over the years, and we've definitely, I think, a couple of years ago, Hamid, you did a really inspirational talk all about incident management. Got a lot of good feedback from it. So we thought we'd get you guys on to tell us a little bit about Uptime Labs and what you guys do. And why don't you give us a little bit of an intro?
So I'm co-founder of Uptime Labs. Started Uptime Labs about 3.5 years ago. But by education, surprise, I'm a civil engineer, not a
didn't know
software engineer.
Didn't know
Yes, but always loved software. Started programming from when I was 7 years old. And then finally, after studying 4 years of civil engineering, decided, you know what, I love computers a lot. So I'm going to do my master's in computer. And that was my intro to world of software engineering and systems. Throughout my career is a turning point where I deleted the entire database for my employer.
Ooh.
And instead of being told off, I was praised for it. And that got me into world of incident response and how complex systems work. And then last 15 years, I've been working for financial services and just studying incidents. Someone last week called me, you are a disaster connoisseur, Hamid. You enjoy good disasters. So that's a little bit about...
one way of looking at it.
Amazing. Well, we'll definitely have to come back to that. But Joe, tell us a bit about yourself. What was your journey into technology?
Yeah, so I'm a software developer by trade. I also in my career, I can always remember that first week going on call and support, and the stress and anxiety it brought. And new job, we moved to another job, we eventually get on call, and the cycle would start again. So this problem set of making life better for everyone on call and having more of an impact has always been there in my career. Hamid and I worked together for over 10 years, and we were part of the team that were responsible for a FTSE 250 company, and we're on the trading system. So we felt the pain together, and that's where the seeds of the idea of Uptime Labs came about.
Amazing. So, tell us in plain terms, what do you offer through Uptime Labs? Because I think we have a sense of what the mission is and what's driven you guys to form the company, but what specifically do you do? And, do you remember where you were when you came up with the idea? What's the origin story?
Yes. So I think the origin really, if I want to dig back, it goes to to what I mentioned, the Oracle database that I deleted.
Yeah.
So that was like my first exposure to, oh my God, nothing makes sense. I ruined the business. How do we recover from it? And how people around me reacted made a huge difference. I didn't last much longer in that company. Found a job in a financial services company. That was where I met Joe. I got that job. It was a brilliant job, dream job, very quickly in 24 hours, which got me thinking, either I'm really good at it, don't know, or I missed the fine print. And it was this latter one. I missed the fine print because a week later, I was handed over a BlackBerry, for those of, I'm revealing a bit of my age here, and was told that you're responsible for availability of this mission critical financial services trading engine. And surely enough, it went off the first night, 3 a.m. in the morning. And the
Mm.
horror of being on call, knowing that everyone expects you to fix the system, but you have no idea where to start from and you're getting questioned, never left me.
Mm.
Over the years, I saw every software engineer going through the same journey. We're taught to write code, to be deliberate, to think. We're not taught to deal with emergencies, work under high stress and high pressure. And the fact that everyone was living through the same horror was that was the first seed of Uptime Labs. Okay, this is a lose-lose game. Over time, we grow through leadership ladder, became the same executive, pain in the neck executive that were putting people on under pressure. And that was like, okay, we got to solve this problem for IT industry. And that's when Joe and I started really thinking about, okay, how do we do that? And we knew it's about people and skill set. So we're looking for ways of creating that skill set, that muscle memory of dealing with emergencies, but it was nothing in the market. So Uptime Labs is something that we would have bought for us. So rest of the story I'll leave for Joe.
Yeah, so as Hamid said, we had this lot of tech, good processes in place, at least in paper, very talented staff on call, yet when you put it together, it just wouldn't resonate. And we knew there was improvement there. And the hard bit was the on-call staff. Your true source of resilience are your people. And that's something we believed in. So we started running internal trainings in our organization to help upskill the staff. And we had a lot of challenges doing that internal. And what we've done is we have built a company whereby we can run these simulations at scale and accelerate the simulations. So if you're on call, we can buy back experience, all the hard scars that we have, maybe a lot of people on these calls listening in would have on call. We can give you lots of different permutations of simulations of incidents whereby you can get that experience, upskill your capability, just like what they do in other industries, in the fire service, aviation, the medical.
Mm.
In crisis management, you're trained. And that's what we've been focused on for Uptime Labs.
Amazing.
The second key point in kind of journey of Uptime Labs was a personal experience in hospital. So I was in a hospital with my wife. Things didn't go well. We're both tired. Nurse comes into the room, notices something wrong on her monitor, presses a red button next to her bed. In a split second, that room was filled with medical staff. They knew exactly what to do. And, 20 minutes later, a life-threatening situation was resolved. And I was just relieved. But at that point, it also occurred to me, if healthcare can do this, we're missing something in IT. And that was the key point for us to look into, as Joe said, into safety critical industries and realize that they invest in tooling. They have the best equipment and processes, but they also equally invest in people and developing the skills that matter, because those skills that matter during emergency are very different to skills that we learn in software engineering at the moment.
And so that's really that's really got to be your main focus, right? This is a training service that you're offering here, right? But just talk to us about, because they're not, people aren't turning up in a training room and sitting and listening to somebody lecture them at the front, right? You actually kind of simulate stuff. Just to explain to us a little bit about the practicalities of how that works, Hamid.
So the best analogy is to think of flight simulator. What flight simulator is doing for pilots, we are doing that for IT operators, software engineers, incident managers, executives. So we create this very immersive, realistic, fictitious environment. It's all web-based. No integration with your own environment is needed. And we put you in a situation that it feels real. It's like, I'm running this business, or I'm part of this business. Something massively has gone wrong. You use the same tooling that you will use in your own environment for communication, for troubleshooting. So everything is real. And that's a key point. This is one of our secret sauces. Because for these simulations to trigger people to behave the way they would trigger in real incidents, to let them to develop expertise, it needs to have enough level of fidelity. And finding what is that enough level is a big part of our journey. You can't replicate all of your environment because that will be impossible. But also, if it's not close enough, it won't trigger you to behave the way you would behave in real life. So we got that balance right. So it feels real. You find yourself in a situation, you totally forget who are you in real life. Now you're fully immersed and stressing how I'm going to solve this problem and save this fictitious business. And that's through that experience that you start developing experience and expertise. I would say, David, it's far more than training. It's a skills expertise development platform.
And you mentioned that you tune it a little bit. So I noticed, Joe, that you're in probably what's your home environment, either that or a very relaxed office, right? So, given that over the last few years, we've got much more remote workers, people working, on the move in office locations, in their home environments, is that all, is the sort of, obviously the digital infrastructure of a company needs to be taken into account, but the culture of a company, the ways of working, the availability of people, do you to kind of tune it all to that so it's a bit more feels like their company?
Yeah, I think like we're old enough to remember back in the day when Hamid and I worked in the city. When we had an incident, we were all sitting at a desk together, and the executive team would come around and sit over our shoulders, and that's how we communicated. We're a million miles from that world now. It's with distributed working and virtual working, 24/7 teams, etc. So that's like the perfect storm for us. Where reality is now, when you deal with incidents, you've got multiple tabs open. You got maybe a bridge call on, you got Teams on, a couple of channels on, channels maybe with the executives, channels with the troubleshooting teams, and you need to translate those skills and be able to juggle these various work streams. So that's what we play up on in the simulations. And we do simple things like the SME is unavailable on the call. Or comms isn't good enough. Comms is not at a frequent rate that you would expect. That triggers then the behaviors of, probing and asking questions, etc. So these social technical challenges we have today, and we play up on that in a new distributed place. And it's all those behaviorals under stress that we ramp up in the simulations. So people then can default back to muscle memory and start being methodical, facts over opinions, that type of thing, if that makes sense. You mentioned a really important culture. So with our customers, for example, what is the culture when it comes to an incident? Is it a very formal culture whereby very sensitive around information we share, etc., and there's a certain level of communication protocol that you expect? Or is it more of an open structure where, when we teach people that what makes sense in our company?
The biggest surprise, David, for us was when we started Uptime Labs, we thought technical skills, being able to do things faster, jump on a terminal, reconfigure network or reconfigure applications is the skills that people want. Okay, how to scale up or scale down. It turned out that no, that's actually not a problem. The hardest part is communication, coordination, decision-making, and sense-making under very uncertain circumstances. So naturally, our platform evolves through providing those experiences.
Mm-hmm. And Joe and Hamid, we normally have a section to this podcast that's called the Disaster Diaries, where what happens is throughout the week, people write in and they tell us things that have gone horribly wrong, and we offer them a little bit of advice. And we thought what we could do this week potentially is David and I could share some examples from our own experience of incident disasters that we personally have experienced. And I think we're interested in your thoughts, and in particular in terms of, things like, as an organization, how do you tell if you're getting better at managing incidents, or what should a North Star be, or things like that. David, do you want to go first, or I'm happy to? I don't sort of mind.
No, sure. So, I'm old enough that I've had a fair few incidents over the years, unfortunately. I like your description, Joe, about the execs come and sit on your shoulders, right? That's a real challenge. That's something where, you're answering the call to them and they're going, what's the update? And you're like, if you get off the phone for 5 seconds, I'll work out what the problem, So we get a bit of that. I guess my most recent one, which is not a big hairy one. I've been involved in some really big hairy ones, but I worked for Naked Wines a few years ago, and every year they did a big Christmas box promotion. It was very popular. You'd order your Christmas wines and you got all sorts of, nice things and stuff like that. But we had an approach where we basically would launch it on a certain day and we'd do marketing around it and stuff like that. And so 10 times the volume of our normal web traffic would hit us on that day. And we got it sorted in the end. But when I first got there, they hadn't quite got their scaling worked out. And basically, for the last 3 years on that day, the website had crashed. Now, the marketing people spin that, right? As they're like, oh, it's so brilliant and successful, it crashed the website, right? So, but the CEO's looking at me going, can we stop the website bloody crashing, please, sort of thing. And so we had an instant around that. Now, what I wanted to do, so they'd had several instances around that. What I wanted to do was really understand how to prepare the team for it's likely to get busy. So it hasn't crashed. It's not a disaster yet, but the sort of I would call it heightened awareness around that period of time. So it's not how do you recover from a disaster, but how do you prepare people that there might be a disaster, that something might go wrong, the heightened awareness bit. Do you guys cover that?
Yes. So it's just what you just described there is really interesting because it touches on a few points that really matter when it comes to preparing for incidents. The first one is having experience and repertoire of various different ways that a system can fail and have a problem. And in that case, load. Excessive load is one of the most complex ones because you get symptoms that it doesn't, from the beginning, doesn't really look like a load. Okay, so practicing different scenarios, seeing how various systems could react under load, that's interesting. And building that experience is important because not everyone, I'm sure at Naked One, has been through those incidents in the past years. So you want as many as people seeing examples of that. The second one is, I touched earlier on, skills that are really matter during those situations. How do you deal with uncertainty? How do you deal with pressure, communicate? One of the biggest problems I see in that and with incidents is everyone in the room having the same understanding of what is going on and how we should react. We call it having a common ground of understanding. That takes the skills to build. So running scenarios and exposing people to practice how to build that common ground is also very, very important. The third aspect of it lies down in your technology, okay? So, which is slightly different to what we do, but also very important. The technical scalability of your platform, testing, load testing, all of that is helpful. But not any of them on their own will save you. You need all three: people, processes, and practices.
A number of our customers have got a strategy around managing peaks, right? Different domains, etc. But let's go back to where you were as a CTO, right? So you knew that you had this thing coming every year. So you had a strategy, right? And not the easy one, but the most maybe obvious ones is technology investment, right? To improve the technology or more resiliency. But also you got to have your people aspect of your on-call staff, right?
Yeah.
A really expensive way is to hire a lot of expensive, experienced engineers to go on call. But reality is, it's getting your staff up to the level that you trust, David. Because a lot of our customers, for example, before they invest, they're relying on maybe the CTO or the head of engineering to be that hero that will get them through that peak period of time. And what you want to do is you want to spread that expertise across your team and your group, especially if you're 24/7 business or something like that.
I think that's spot on. And I think the people part of it is, to your point, often the most least understood bit, right? I think that'll be really important. Sophie, so that's my disaster diary or nearly disaster diary. What about you? What have you got?
Yeah, mine is very much in the theme that we were just touching on around kind of people and culture piece. So my disaster was very much not a disaster, but I had an incident at a health tech I was working at previously where we released a feature that had been tested. And we also lifted a feature flag of something that had already been released that had also been tested, but they hadn't been tested together. And what that produced, that kind of coming together of two things integrating, was that a fairly critical feature in the product didn't work properly. And the way that it translated was the best it ever could. And I'll describe what happened to you, but I'm interested in your thoughts on how to build a culture that we just happen to have to achieve that kind of best case scenario. So that best case scenario was sort of the flag was lifted and the feature was released at the same time. And we had a bunch of sort of lay users throughout the company that immediately hopped on and just played around with it because they were in a really good practice of, I want to know what the features are like before the customers sort of start having an opportunity to interact with them. And so it was picked up pretty much immediately. Everything technologically was rolled back within, I think it was 31, 32 minutes. They had the two engineers who had worked on it, who were available. They sat together around a computer. The C-suite said, we're going to leave it to you guys. We don't want to disturb you, which is very different to what you guys have been describing. We were able to verify immediately that no real users had used it, so we could understand that there wasn't any actual risk or actual harm that had occurred from the risk. We had a retro before the end of the day, and for each of these stages, we were able to go back and implement improvements to our process or to our technology so that it wouldn't happen again. So we were all incredibly proud of ourselves by the end of that day. And again, the individuals involved really kind of brought that a really kind of dynamic, a direct, a solution-focused approach. They were very kind of thoughtful about the roles that needed to be played and very focused on improving for next time. But I've definitely worked in companies where that sort of culture didn't exist. And so Joe and Hamid, I'm really interested in your thoughts on how a company can build up that culture where everything just kind of goes as smoothly as it can do after an incident.
Such a beautiful story, captures so many points in human factors and joint cognitive systems. The first one, which you just described there and happened in action, is resilience is what you do, not what you have. I would look into why those people who were excited to try the features in production as soon as it was released, why they were there, what did they do, what they discovered, how you can do a lot more of that. That's something that people did, okay, which saved the day. The other point to bear in mind is oral systems. They always run in a degraded state. It's thanks to the people and human that, I'm always surprised how the systems are always operational and running. It's because what people do. So if you take these two pieces, coming back to your story, the engineering culture, the concept of learning from incidents, the practice of people jumping online after the release, trying things, noticing, flagging it as soon as possible. That was key. How do you scale that? Okay. And I think the scaling of it is by the story of that incident being repeated and told over and over again in the company, which touches on learning from incidents. So in summary, I think constantly learning from incidents, having incident reports that are written for engineers and read by engineers. And as an executive, if you can see and track how many people are turning up to those post-incident review, and reading it, I think that's the biggest gift you can give to your organizations in terms of improving resiliency of your system.
Yeah, I just add, Sophie, like maybe as a leadership perspective, I would have the mindset or strategy that incidents will happen is how you cope with them.
Yeah.
Right. Given the complexity of the systems and AI and, all sorts of changes going in there, I think it's a much smarter move to have a strategy that incidents will happen. We cover as quick as possible when they do happen. Right. Of course you do the investment, et cetera, to avoid as many incidents as possible. But the strategy is that they do happen. So now you're in a playbook. Okay, how do we react and perform to our best of business so we reduce that reputational revenue or regulatory impact, or the customer gets the best experience possible while these things happen? That's a much more sure state strategy. And the notice in your story, Sophie, you're in a high trust environment. If leadership say, give them some space, right? That's high trust, right? So then the question is, how do you build high trust in your org? Right? Do you just say, hey, hopefully when it happens, everyone will know what to do, right? As a risky move, whereas you can be a more proactive approach, which is invest in your people and help people understand their role responsibilities, and have proven through practice that they can do it, right, at scale.
It's also a good segue into differentiating the concept of robustness and resilience. Okay. Of course, after each incident, you learn things about your technology that you didn't know. You build layers of defense, okay, redundancy or higher capacity. But it's inevitable that there will be a day when those layers of defense will fall one after the other. And when all of that happens, you depend on your people, how adaptive they are to respond to that situation to keep your system running. And that is resilience. And that only, as Joe mentioned, is a culture, is the practices that's happening. Examples of it is code reviews, simulations, post-incident reviews, how collaborative they are done. These are the key, just 3 examples of developing resilience in your organization. And as a leader, this is your key part. No one else can do it better than a leader who understands resilience and help that culture in an organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of that leadership aspect, I'm sure it's something that many CTOs kind of clearly see the benefit of sort of services like Uptime Labs to build, as you say, that resilience. And often will probably have to make an argument to their CEO. We really need to invest in this sort of technology. I mean, what are the words you would put in their mouths of the kind of core benefit to businesses more broadly and leaders of organizations of services like these? What are the kind of tangible takeaways that, 1 year, 2 years down the line, how will you be performing better?
One example I always use in my conversations is tell kind of C-levels that imagine you're facing an incident in a parallel war. In Ward 1, you have a team that's been regularly practicing dealing with Sev zeros and Sev 1, and perhaps have seen that scenario before. In Ward B, you have still similarly skilled engineers, but they haven't practiced, or many of them haven't been regularly practicing. Which universe you want to be in to deal with that incident? And that answers it. When the pressure is high, you fall to your highest level of preparation. You don't raise into the challenge. And I'm quoting Chris Voss here. So that's my argument.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think as you say that, you go through an incident and you do what you can and you have the learning process, but you always kick yourself a bit and say, gosh, if we hadn't only known that thing beforehand. Yeah. And it sounds like that's what Uptime Labs is doing. We want to know it beforehand so that when the real incidents come, the harm is as small as possible.
Yeah. So I think all of this preparation and investment in on-call staff, the lag indicator here is when the incidents occur in the organization, which a lot of, bottom line is a revenue impact. You can reduce that as much as possible. And clearly effective incident response in your organization, and mobilizing the teams, address it as quick as possible, managing the comms, ultimately will have an impact on your bottom line. So we wanted to go in the right direction, right? Okay. And you're doing something proactive to address that. The second area then is obviously when customers understand that in a complex environment, like as a technologist, there's more and more you're outsourcing into third parties outside your control. So an example will be, for example, an incident with Cloudflare earlier in the year. Cloudflare went down. A lot of companies have dependencies. Your customer doesn't care. They don't care. It was someone else's fault. So then you're thinking about the customer experience as well perspective. So there's a tangible thing around when the incidents happen, you really manage. There's an opportunity for you to show off your customer experience skills as well. So I think customer delight and revenue are 2 lag indicators for this investment. And what CEO doesn't want to hear about that?
Absolutely. Yeah, super, super clear. And just coming kind of a little bit closer to home in terms of how to understand as an organization, are we getting better at handling incidents? Hamid, do you have any thoughts on what are the sort of metrics that leaders should be prioritizing within their tech division?
Yes, very, very good question. I can tell you what leaders that I'm talking to are in our industry mostly looking at now. and I tell you what I suggest them to look instead. So you got metrics like mean time to recovery, mean time to mitigation, duration between incidents, incident frequency, or number of incidents that are raised. So these are all useful numbers, but statistically, they don't tell you anything about if you're getting better or worse in an incident. I'll just give you one example. Okay, how can you tell the difference of a really hard incident handled poorly and a bad incident handled well? They may take the same amount of time. Okay, and you can't control how long an incident takes. So in absence of better way in our industries to understand if you're getting better or worse, we need numbers. These numbers exist. If they help, I doubt it. They just tell you a little bit about the elephant, but they don't reveal much. What would be a lot more useful is, coming back to the example you brought up earlier, is how many people, how many engineers, how many senior managements are voluntarily reading your incident reports, learning from that. Tracking that number. Don't push people to do it, but just track how many, because that's evidence of learning. Okay, how many of these reports are written? How often in your organizations teams are running drills and practices to build those expertise and share knowledge? Or what range of failure types in your organizations you have practiced? Do you practice various sort of network failures, load failures, security failures? These are the ones that will come handy when you really need it. So I think in our industry, we need the shift in our mindset, moving from statistical numbers that can't tell us much to really valuable evidence of we are building expertise, we are building resilience in our organizations.
Absolutely. It really makes sense to have metrics that really reflect what you care about. It's very easy to optimize for the wrong numbers. I think we've seen businesses time and again, you give them the wrong number, everyone optimizes really hard in the wrong direction. So as you say, reflecting on what matters, as you say, that ability to kind of learn and improve ability to handle incidents, and what metrics reflect that most strongly.
Yeah, and leaders have a huge role in that, because the metrics you define, the metrics that you look for will drive the behavior in an organization. Okay, if you look for number of incidents, those numbers will come down. But in reality, you actually need more incidents because you can learn from them. If you look for time to recovery, those numbers may come down, but that doesn't really generate any learning in your organization. So I think leaders have a huge part in creating the resilience culture that Joe talked about earlier. And that starts from metrics that you look for.
Well, that was all great. Thank you, Joe and Hamid. Really appreciate you joining us for the day. It was really brilliant to have you on board, and we've learned so much about what you guys do at Uptime Labs and how useful it can be to our audience as they move forward with their leadership and preparing for those hopeful disasters that won't come. So thanks very much for joining us.
No worries.
Thanks, guys.
We're back for another mid-episode game. And we have the lovely Will hosting us again because Luke is, I don't know, he's swanning off skiing or something rubbish. Or other,
He is, yeah.
It's the time of year.
Yeah, 2 weeks now. I think maybe this is a full-time job for me, and he can stay on the slopes. You never know. But yeah, he's skiing. He's having a good time. He sent a photo through earlier, which it looks lovely where he is. So not jealous at all. But anyhow, yeah, we are going to play a very similar game to last week, which is called
Tech to the Top.
So David and Sophie, last week we played Tech to the Top, and I was advised by David that perhaps we should make this a bit more of a product angle as opposed to tech, given Sophie's background. So for that reason, I have created a more product-based quiz. So it will follow the same format. Obviously, you can gain incremental points if you keep answering questions correctly. If you get a question wrong, you'll go back to 1 point for the following question. There'll also be the chance to pass over to the other player if you get a question wrong, and that'll be worth 1 point as well. Okay. Now, David, you went first last week. So Sophie, you will go first this week. It's just a case of choosing whether you'd like to go for question set 1 or question set 2.
Oh, I think I'm going to go for question set 2, please, Quizmaster.
Okay, no worries. Well, here we go then. Let's get on with it. So, question set 2. Question 1, Sophie, is what does OKR stand for in product and business strategy?
It stands for objective and key result.
Correct. Good job. 1 point on the board already.
Thank you very
good.
much.
Hopefully, this is going to be a bit more aligned to your experience.
Hopefully.
We'll see. Okay, cool. Nice. Question 2. This is worth 2 points. What metric measures how many users stop using a product over time?
That would be churn.
Correct. That's 2 points on the board. So 3 points in total.
Mhm.
Question 3 is who wrote The Lean Startup, a book that influenced modern product development?
I do know this and I've read it. I don't know this. I'll pass to What bloody, who wrote the... No, sorry, it's gone. David?
I've read it as well, but I can't remember.
Okay, it's a guy called Eric Ries, is it? Or Eric Ries?
Yeah.
Ries, yeah, that's good to know. Okay, so that is 0 points, unfortunately, for that question. So we're back to 1 point for question 4, but 3 points on the board so far, so it's going pretty well. Okay, question 4. Which term describes a visual representation of the steps a user takes to complete a task in a product?
Oh, I would say a user flow. I think there are like a few synonyms, but I would call it a user flow.
I'll give you that. Yeah, I've got user journey, but I think user flow.
Yeah.
Good job. Okay, 1 point. Also, I was going to say I was going to be a bit more harsh with if you get questions wrong, but I'll keep it friendly.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, cool. So 1 point for that. So that is 4 points in total so far. Question 5. What is the name for a fictional user profile created to guide product decisions?
Oh, I mean, I would say persona, but again, I think you have synonyms for this one.
You do have synonyms, but you got it correctly. It's persona. I've got persona down, which is brilliant. This is going very well. David, no pressure on your round. That was worth 2 points. So you are now on 6 points in total. So that means question 6, the final question in this round, is worth 3 points, Sophie. So question is, which collaboration tool uses boards, lists, and cards to help teams organize projects?
Oh, well, there's a bunch of them, but I think you were talking about Jira.
I'm not in this case. I'm talking about Trello.
Oh,
I knew that.
I keep forgetting.
It's literally the same technology. Can we they're literally the same technology. But anyway, fine. Okay.
They're not the same technology.
Oh my God, they are.
They're not.
They are.
No. All right, they're the same concept, but they do different things, right? Jira doesn't focus on boards so much as tickets, and Trello's much more. Trello was like the board one, the one that did the columns across. You can do that in things, but then you could say you got AHA and all sorts of things, right?
Yeah, no, this is very
and
very good point.
I forgot again this week to pass it over, David. But as you said so confidently that you knew it, I think benefit of the doubt, I'll give you a point.
Give him the point.
Yeah,
100%.
I think I will. That means that Sophie, for this week on that round, you have scored 3, 4, 6 points.
Ooh.
Nice score.
Good. It's pretty good. And David, you're on 1 point because you got the last question correct.
Thank you.
Okay, here we go. So, David, your round now. Obviously, these are a bit more product-based, so might test your knowledge a little bit more. And don't forget, Sophie, if David gets a question wrong, then you can come in.
I will be ready.
If Will remembers to ask you,
Got to make a note of that. A little post-it note. Anyway, here we go. So, David, question 1. What does MVP stand for in product development?
Minimum viable product.
Correct.
And I hate it. Shouldn't be used. Should be banned.
Oh, you vote for minimum lovable product? That's the one I've heard most as a replacement.
No, minimum usable product to do me. People get. Let's have a whole debate about this another time.
Next time.
What is minimum viable product and why did it exist? Anyway, got a point.
Yeah, that's a good conversation. I don't know anything about that, but sounds great. Cool. Anyhow, so question 2. Well done, David, on 1 point so far. Question 2, you should get this, hopefully. What is the name of the Agile framework that uses sprints to deliver work in short cycles?
Scrum.
Correct.
Yeah.
2 points. 3 points so far. Question 3 is worth 3 points. Which company popularized the freemium pricing model for consumer software?
Ooh.
Oh,
Ooh. Spotify.
That is correct.
wow.
Well done. Did you use like the premium to help you with that? Or
Well, no, I just used my memory because I started with freemium and went to premium. So, you know, and I now pay something ridiculous like 20 quid a month to Spotify for my
Yeah.
entire family to use it on my behalf.
Well done. Great work. So that actually means you're on 6 points now. Okay, so you're actually Sophie.
How am I going to lose
But
this? Oh, God.
you have to get the next few right to guarantee that win. Question 4 is worth 4 points, David.
Yeah.
In product management, what does the ICE framework or ICE framework stand for? Used to prioritize ideas.
Ice, not rice.
I've got ICE.
You see,
ICE.
I would use rice, but so what? I'm assuming that I've not heard of just ice. I'm assuming that ice is part of rice. So now I need to remember what rice stands for and take the R off. I'm going to say importance. No, importance. Impact. Impact is I.
Okay.
C is complexity. And E is effort.
That's not right, unfortunately. The first one is. But
Impact.
yeah, impact's correct. Sophie, do you know the other two?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I'm surprised that effort is E is not effort. So I would have said, so rice is reach, impact, confidence. So like you make your estimates
Confidence,
and
there
do
you
I
go.
actually think they're right?
Yeah. Confidence.
But it's not effort.
No, think about when something isn't too difficult to do.
Oh, ease, because numerically you like multiply them together, and if you have effort, you have to divide them. And if it's,
Yeah.
that's okay. Well, yeah.
Yeah, that's correct.
David,
But I use it all the time.
yeah, no, same. Can we give David 1/3 of a point, me 1/3 of a point, and then no one gets ease / effort?
Sure.
If you're happy with that, I mean, I wasn't offer you the whole point, Sophie, but if you're happy to do
damn
less.
She's taking it, Sophie. She's taking it.
Yeah.
Okay, we will move on. Question 5 is, which is usually defined first in product discovery, the solution or the problem?
Problem. I mean, that's a bit easy.
It's a
Come
pretty
on,
easy
that
one.
That was like junior school product, wasn't it?
Getting some confidence back.
Thank you.
Okay, so finally, question 6 is worth 2 points. Okay, so this is the last question. And we kind of covered this actually in the previous round, so you might know it. Which company created the project management tool Jira?
I can't say it. Atlassian.
Is correct.
Yeah,
Is
that's it.
correct. So well done, David. So even with the product angle, unfortunately, Sophie, David has to won this week.
Sorry, Sophie, what do you know? Let's do a quiz on something you actually know about, shall we?
Yeah, like pictures of small animals or something completely unprofessional.
Good. I'm joking. I think the questions were a little over easy in my pile there, Will.
Maybe. But that's the luck of the draw, you see. There's questions.
It is. That's true.
So that takes us to the end of episode 8 of season 2 of the CTO Lens. So thank you so much for joining us all the way through. We've had a great conversation today. We've really enjoyed talking about everything that's happening in the news, from free AI training for adults, through to AWS's Eurocloud being switched on, through to the latest in driverless car news, through to what's happening in terms of Coinbase regulation. We've also really enjoyed having a conversation with Joe and Hamid from Uptime Labs to understand a little bit more about how tech leaders can be really proactive when it comes to incident management. And of course, you heard from David and myself our disaster diaries of incidents that we have faced previously. Do remember to sign up for our events. If you're a woman plus working in tech, you can join us on the 5th of March, where we will be talking about using culture as a leadership tool. And of course, on the 25th of March, for people of all genders, it's London Tech Leaders number 23 about the evolving CTO mandate. And as you will hear on the day, it's definitely something that's evolving. And of course, as always, if you do have your own disaster diaries, you can send that to us as well. So we will look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you for joining and take care.